So we will finish up the sixth half of this 3-class series, part B of class 3, and we will do that by exploring more of the level of pure sattva, out of which one moves from the mixed sattva that Shankara was using as we looked into the 3 sword fighters chart. And then we introduced ourselves again to the 3 Shaktis, Maya Shaktis, that go along with those 3 gunas. So there's always a power in everything. These things were left loosely associated, you might say, through time, through the scriptures, long over centuries, and revisitations by illumined souls, Dharma teachers. And then beings, great lights came along, like Shankar and so forth, and said something in a particularly revelatory way, and really made firm connections again, like reconnected things, like he was doing with the Gunas and Prakasha Shakti and Avarana Shakti, Vikshepa Shakti. And we want to also give equal time as much as possible in this 3-class series to thoughts. Klista and Aklista we've looked at. And we mentioned briefly no thinking, non-thinking, avritti. There are beautiful chants about it that come to mind when I think about it, but being able to stop the mind from thinking and wait. Meditation should be that ideally, but sometimes it's good to do that in your contemplation mode. Turn on your thoughts and off your thoughts. And there's a selector in there. Well, what am I going to think about now? Nobody ever thinks about that being. Just think about the thoughts are on, the thoughts are off. Who turned it on, who turned it off? I know not. Maybe that's the Prakasha Shakti or the Mahashakti there that's allowing you. It would be good to think so, but at least it's your witness consciousness that's looking for something to fathom of a profound nature, an unusual nature, not the commonplace and conventional that so many people, that run of thought. Or even maybe, because we were talking about at the break here, how the scientist also has a certain version of Prakasha Shakti operating in them when they're looking into space or when they're looking at matter. They want something revealed, and then when it gets revealed, some new secret, so-called new, we call it, then I have discovered that. So the ego right away jumps in and says, look what I have got, I have seen. And then eventually what I will make popular and what I will make money off of. Those different levels of thought kick in. Tamasic and Rajasic, this is like those two are waiting, to cover and to distort. So the revelatory power, if it's kept pure, like in Sri Ramakrishna's case, well, Mother revealed to me. It was all Mother revealed to me. So she sits in my throat, I open my mouth, she speaks. And then this body is just a pillowcase. He had all sorts of ways of saying that it was the Divine Mother he had found and that she had taken over the whole process. Like, I feel like a bunch of popsicle sticks strung together, by strings, and she's like moving the string puppet kind of thing. We used to make those when you were a kid. Ate too many popsicles, and everyone had these sticks lying around, so you'd make puppets out of them and operate them, dance them around, like shadow puppets. So that's what he felt like. He was obviously, and quite often saying that. So I think since we want to give equal time to thoughts, let's visit Holy Mother's realm. Not that it's not all Holy Mother's realm, but Holy Mother means specifically Sri Sharda. And look about this important word called sadhana. So she said here, I have done much more than necessary to make my life a mold. Ah, the ecstasy of those days. One moonlit night, or on moonlit nights, I would look at the moon and pray with folded hands, may my heart be as pure as the rays of yonder moon. Or, Lord, there is a stain even on the moon, but let there be not the least trace of stain in my mind. You can say, the ecstasy of those days means that this was how she was put into samadhi, or higher states of mind, and maintained them all the time, as we saw in her, and we heard reported so much. So many of millions of her devotees now. She's just pretty much known, and go around India, oh, Ma Sharda, oh, Ma Sharda. Just like nobody has to introduce her anymore, even though she was Lajapata Vritti Nityam, the eternal mother behind modest veil. Now she's been here and gone, and quite a few people recognized her thanks to Sri Ramakrishna. She's a village cat that rolls in ashes, kind of things he said about her, humorous, that most people couldn't recognize her because she seemed like a humble village woman. Songs written about that. Yeah. Vaikunta hate Lakshmi elo ire vritti matite Vaikunta hate Lakshmi elo. Lakshmi has come back. The Divine Mother of the Universe has come back, and from out of Vakunta, where Vishnu and her reside, and now in Jairambati, she's now incarnated herself in this tiny little village of Jairambati, and it goes on like this. Beautiful, unknown hymns that have been written by many of the people who saw her and even heard about her afterwards. So a little bit of an introduction to this being who was encouraging us to do japa of the mantra, because that was leading to purification of mind. One of the better ways to lead to purification of mind. You'll see as we go through this, which is not going to take, doesn't need to take much time, but you see there 4 bubbles. One is worship of the great master, one is japa of the mantra, one is meditation on the Ishtam, and the other is wisdom as compassion. And these were 4 selections I made, 4 of the favorite things, or the main things, Prakasha Shakti style, that stood out to me when I think of her and when I study her and meditate on her, right there. And if you were following the first one, worship of the great master, you would maintain a shrine and an altar, and you would light candles and incense and sing to the deity. It's just as if you might go over to your mother's house one night if you're a grown man, sit her down and light a candle in front of her, burn some incense and sing her some songs. So it's just, there she is, your Divine Mother. So you do that in a sacred place where you've installed her, which is really just a representation of where she's really installed in your heart, in the heart chakra, where you're supposed to meditate upon her. But all of this is Vaidya Bhakti and Gauna Bhakti and turns into Raga Bhakti. It's all these levels of increased devotion that come about from participating in this kind of purification. And then you'd offer puja and arati to her, as we do at ashrams, and they do even at monasteries and so forth. And millions of people now doing that in their homes and in their parents' homes and their ancestors, and in cities around the world, and in centers and ashrams and in monasteries, worshipping her. If you were to use another avenue of purification, then japa of the mantra is what she would ask of you. And the first thing, of course, we would say parrot-like repetition of the mantra. She would say, even that helps a little, because you're saying different words than you usually are saying to people in the world. So, like the man who was having trouble, and so he said, in the woods, he said, because he was afraid. So Saraswati, the goddess, thought he was saying I'm, which is her bijam. So she came running to him to help him. So even if you mispronounce it or don't say it in the right spirit, you're going to catch her attention, and she'll correct later. It's the compassion that she has. And so know the mantra's meaning would be the best foot forward. And you'd be surprised how many people don't. I have stories of it. Can you give me initiation? Someone said to Kala Rinpoche, the great Tibet teacher, when I was there. Have you been initiated before? Came the response. Yes. Who initiated you? Such and such. Did you get a mantra? Yes. Would you mind imparting to me that mantra and letting me know? Yes, here it is. Here it is. And then, do you know its meaning? The teacher said. And then, no, I was not given the meaning. Go back to your teacher who initiated you, get the meaning, and then come back to me, and I'll see if I can initiate you into Tibetan Buddhism. So they're very specific and careful about that meaning. Every seed bijam, power in it is this meaning, and that's just on the surface level. Then words get deeper and more intense. So, for instance, knowing your first word in most mantras, like say Dalai Lama's mantra, it's not a secret, Om Mani Padme Hum. So Om, A-U-M, A, waking state, U, dreaming state, M, deep sleep state, Shvara, transcendent. You might say Gunas, the three transcendent of the three Gunas there in the Shvara. So you'd have to know that, connect it, think about it, meditate on it. Then when you said it, it would have its desired effect inside of you quicker. You still may have to repeat it for a while depending on what's in the mind that needs to be purified and how open you are to being cut in the image of God. And repeat it with intensity. It's a word we've been talking about a lot lately. Clarification and intensity, because you don't want to intensify things unless you're clear about them. So if the mind's not clear and you're intensifying, which is a mistake a lot of people make, then lots of mixed results are coming back from rajas and so forth. And maybe even some old habits and problems out of your mind from previous karmas, sanchita karma, coming back on you. So clarification first, kyati, and then get that, then intensify everything. These are teachings she would give along this avenue of mantra. If you were looking at meditation as your main practice, then it should be on God with form and beyond form. As far as God with form, she says, envision him/her fully in your heart chakra. So I've talked to my Hindu students before and other Hindus as I went to India in my 20s and after, and tell me about this process. Well, we build the Ishtam from the ground up, just like a building, like they do with the form that they worship at their pujas and so forth. They'll build the whole thing out of clay and vermilion paint and various things, decorate it, worship it. So in the mind it has to be done the same way. So, if I can't see the feet yet, I can't build the rest, you see. So you don't just start looking straight at the face, in this case, not if you're following this kind of visualization. So you have to sit and meditate, and finally I see the feet of my Lord, or the goddess. And now I'll add the ankles and the shins and the thighs and the waist and so forth, until I've made her out of consciousness. Mrinmoy, is being made out of materials of earth, but Chinmoy is made out of consciousness. Sharmakrishna used to make that distinction. So you must make the goddess out of Chinmoy, out of Chinmatra, out of particles of your own intelligence, and create her inside of your heart and worship her there. And nobody has meddled with that process, you see. In fact, you've had a few friends in high places that have come along and supported you, told you how to do it, and how quickly or not to proceed in this inner construction of a divine deity. So then move beyond form. So the meditation with form in the higher reaches of Indian thinking always has to connect to the formless essence. If it doesn't, then okay, well, that's how far you went with it, and it's all right. Your salvation is guaranteed, kind of thing. But for liberation, they really feel like you need to have this hailstone in the ocean experience at one point. Something that, as we were just saying, goes beyond klista and aklista to no thoughts. Nirvritti, no vibrations. Nivritti. That has to be also a part of you, because that's where you'll notice that there's someone being nothing, somebody being nobody. How to say it? I was meditating, I lost my thoughts, and there was no ishtam there or anything. All of a sudden I just saw me, you see. And that's all there is. I am Atma Brahma, the self is Brahman. And it only showed itself to me when everything else was gone. So that's emptiness to the Buddhists, the highest kind of emptiness, shunyata. Because it's a presence. You can't, and my teacher said, you can go on discriminating away everything to get there, but you'll never be able to get rid of the discriminator, the one who's doing the discriminating. That's the point in self-realization. If you don't like the word self, then in pragyaparam, supreme intelligence, as the Buddha called it. So move beyond form after that envisionment, and you'll probably want to go back and forth between the two. That's how the instructions I was given from my Swami, peace and bliss be upon him, in the Ramakrishna order when I took initiation in my 20s. So I took that mantra diksha and was instructed to use both of those modes. Now the last one there is wisdom as compassion, which is Jnanodaya yoga. I heard along the way from a few worshippers of Holy Mother who were monks, and one other person that there is one of her yogas she taught was Jnanodaya yoga, and she brought it back out of some distant divine atmosphere that some rishis had used it. But it was like having compassion for your own self by going away with your own unreal suffering. Why are you holding that? So that's the first stroke of compassion you have, is just free yourself. Why do you need to be bound and go through all that? There's just no reason for it whatsoever. You might want to look at the Gunas for that, and maybe figure them out of the quotient, or hang on to sattva for that. But for a while, see. But then eventually, then you'll have this highest state of compassion for others too. You say, I did it. I can show you how to do it. Like she said. In fact, where is that? Right here. Very beautiful. She says, you must approach holy beings with the proper attitude. Next, dive deep with the noble ideas you receive from them, then turn and help and serve others. That's the most beautiful threefold advice I've ever heard, in spiritual life. Approach holy beings with the proper attitude, dive deep with the noble ideas they give you, then turn and help others. And that's the full dharmic spectrum. It will reveal the despicable nature of adharma, and the preferred level of dharma, and the goal of human existence, which is swadharma, another beautiful triputi that you could very easily connect with the gunas. So if you are following the path of Jnanodaya, wisdom is compassion, or wisdom as compassion, destroy mental distractions. So you're kind of on the Jnana Yoga track, where you see the Bhakti Yoga passes up here, Mantra Yoga and so forth. So, path of meditation there. So it's really pretty much kind of a 4 yoga package again. So you want to, if you're following this, wisdom gets rid of ignorance necessity so that love can burgeon forth naturally, then you're going to, as I said earlier in the first half, inspect your mind and find all those dark specks the white paper and the dark specks. You see, it's pure white down here, holding up the light, you see dark specks in it. Find those and remove them. Erase them, cut them out, whatever you need to do, and make it purer than the moon, because the moon still has spots on it. Purify the mind then with knowledge. Once you've gotten rid of the ignorance, the knowledge can really help you. Once ignorance is mixed in with it, like in Rajas and Tamas, or even with mixed sattva, the knowledge you're getting isn't quite doing it until that moment comes along. When you've, cut your teeth on it, and you've eaten it, you're in the process of digesting it, and finally it's a part of you. When all of that has to happen, then you're going to have to be imbibing more and more of the nectar of non-dual truth, and hearing that from these great sources, both ancient and timely and in the form of your own teachers, living teachers. So purify the mind with that further, because once ignorance is gone, it can come back, come dancing back like green scum, because maybe really convinced Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti that they don't exist anymore, or are they in billions of other souls in the collective mind still, and you can do nothing about that. So isn't it possible to get influenced by those again, take parents amongst those again, and be amongst societies and cultures that are materialistic and mistaking the goal of life for something else? Real, a very definite false superimposition going on there. So once you've reached that level, and it can be reached in one of these or with all of them, I can attest. And our founder of our SRV associations too, I didn't see him not doing any of these. It wasn't like, oh, I'll take one, His whole life was all of them all the time. And maybe the focus and emphasis would shift, but you don't throw one thing out, take another at that level, because all of these are beneficial, and you need a lot to convince yourself and others that Avarana and Vikshepa Shakti don't need to exist in you, and that they won't come dancing back naturally out of nowhere, so to speak. So I'm in the knowledge yoga, which is one, of course, one of the ones that I favor. Really want to accent that. I've tried to accent it in the first half of the class where we were talking about the mind. Well, really, if it's got these other considerations in it, you can give it the purest food, and it won't help it that much. It might be a thing as I'm keeping my nose above water with that, for a long time, just like, that was a nice class, blub, 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 blub. Another class comes, I can breathe again, blub, blub, blub. You see, but no, let's get past all that, and let's have that inspiration at hand all the time. The waters of relativity away. So the mind needs to take itself up there, convince itself that it's one with Brahman, pure mind, Shuddha mind, not Shuddha or Vishuddha, but Shuddha mind, or Ashuddha, sorry, but Shuddha mind, pure mind, like she's talking about here, one of her great teachings. And then serve God in mankind. So you can see how that's the compassion part of wisdom and compassion. It's not just for you. In fact, eventually you'll find out it's not all about me at all, because I found out the me doesn't exist. It's one thing to say, well, it's not about me, so aren't I clever, and aren't I more sincere now? But it's another thing entirely to say, it's not about me because there is none. And that's where Sri Ramakrishna comes in. Who are you, sir? New people would ask him. Well, I've been asking myself that question for decades. I can't find a me in me. Mamakara is in everyone else. It's the first evolute of Maya is, I'm the body, and I am, my little self, Mamakara. The actor, I'm the little self that acts. See, it's in everyone from cradle. Will it be there at the grave? We certainly hope not. So a quick run through those, but very beautiful one. Some of the quotes then we can throw in as beautiful sidebars there. Pure mind is God, Sri Ramakrishna says. And he would know because he's got his children, his 16 direct disciples there. We sing about her. Mata Shamma Sundari Ramachandra Pituge Jagadamba Bhavatarini Uterile Navade Agahana Krishna Saptami Dina Punita Gururvar Hwa Sharda Kaparama Karunamaya Avatar Karunamaya Avatar Jaya Rama Bhati Punya Gati Sahaja Sukriti Mahodara Chiramano Bhavana Bhumi Pavana Shasha Sundara Urvara Mangala Vidatri Shanti Datri Pavana Vishoka Timirana Avatari Mata Divya Gata Vimala Bhumi Ritambara Jaya Rama Bhati Punya Gati Sahaja Sukriti Mahodara Chiramano Bhavana Bhumi Pavana Shasha Shamara Urvara Shasha Shamara Urvara. A beautiful hymn written in our own lifetime. Unknown hymn, really. O Mother of the Universe, singing about Sharda. You are the savior of the worlds. Incarnate in fresh form in the house of your mother, Shamasundari. The beautiful, pure Shama, and Father Ramchandra, father's name Ramchandra. This most auspicious incarnation that you have taken took place on the 7th lunar date of the dark fortnight of the month Argadhyana, which is December, on an auspicious Thursday. Then you bestowed all that is auspicious since your birth. You granted peace to others, and you destroyed our sorrows, delusions, and ignorance. You graced us with a celestial form, a pure intellect filled with truth. You incarnated in a tiny Indian village of Jairambati, naturally inhabited with pious people, in hallowed lands that are always pleasing to the mind, green, rich, with fertile soil. And it goes on and on like this. A beautiful hymn about Holy Mother. So, yes, pure mind is God. Sri Ramakrishna would know. He had the Divine Mother for his wife, and all these divine children, 16 divine monk children, as mind-born sons. So she says further, whatever you want to achieve, do it now. This is the right time. Through sadhana, the ties of the past karma are cut asunder. So here's, you're not just saying it and then not giving you anything to go on. There's the sadhana, 4 yogas, if you will, that she would provide you with, like the hymn says, and that she would encourage you along those paths. And she says, those who have come to the Master and I have not assembled for fun. They know how fortunate they are in getting a human birth, which will be next week's God blog, by the way. They have not assembled here for fun, none of them. If you've come here as use the earth as a vacation land or to satisfy your desires and other things, all power to you. May you take the highest route to do those, accomplish those things. But they have not come here for any of that. And come here to awaken sleeping humanity to their true nature and free them for all time. There you see one of her names. Japaharini means perfect in the art of japa. So that was the one yoga that, she could not only hold up to you, give you initiation as she did for thousands of souls, who then, like my guru, came to the West to give it to us, because she gave it direct to him. And then take that mantra out and show them the meaning, show them how to recite it, tell them how to pronounce it, use a visualization meditation with it, and realize your oneness with divine reality via that beautiful process. So that's Japaharini. But she said, remember, japa is not the goal. She said, it's a means, one of the best means to it. So we see it, in Islam, the names of God. We see it in Christianity with Mother Mary. And we see it in Sufism and so forth. They're using these divine names and these mantras to maybe appease the powers that be, so that they will let them alone, so that they can then propitiate these deities, and these deities in revelatory fashion can come out of everything. See, it's sometimes your own attachment to objects that's keeping you from noticing the higher attributes of a thing, even an object. It's like, handing someone an ice cream cone or something. They throw it away. You didn't tell them how to use it. See? So there's a revelatory power in it. So all these things need to be explained because of the inherent power in them. You're just helping the Prakasha Shakti to reveal things. First you do it for yourself, then you do it for others. It's natural. It's just what it ends up in. Serve other beings. The other, I do want to use some of our time to this is an important new chart. So let's read her final quotes here. Perform your sadhana by meditating upon the Lord. On that day in which you have the right mood, you'll have meditation spontaneously. What's the right mood? Sattva guna. So that's often used, she said, watch your mind the same time every day, morning, night meditations, especially in the morning, because when you get up in the morning, that tamas crept in on you, and you don't feel so well. Where did it come from? Who knows? Or you're restless, you jump out of bed and you're running around, so you're enthusiastic. Well, that's good, maybe. Good, better, and best, at least you should say. But anyway, those kinds of teachings are there that she gives about watching your mind all the time, because then you'll know it changes. And there's an unchanging, pure mind that is Brahman that you're missing out on, like the pure sattvic side of things. So you always encourage the mind to go there, stay there, watch the thoughts or lack of thoughts that are there, watch the gunas or lack of gunas that are there, and be the Eskimo watching snow conditions, as the Zen Buddhists say. As the timepiece on the wall goes on ticking, so too you must continue to repeat God's name. Thus you will attain everything. And I said this already as a metaphor earlier. Master used to fall in samadhi upon seeing Mother Kali's image adorned with 7-stranded garlands I fashioned from full-blown jasmine and rangan flowers. Ah, beautiful. Just even to see it with your mind's eye, what to smell it with the inner senses. I haven't gone through that chart for a coon's age, as they say. So it's good that we've gone through it and seen it, and it's on the camera. People can look back on the class to see it. let us see what Sattva Guna at a very high level is about to finish this series. It'll be a good way to put an exclamation point on this 3-class series of the Gunas of Sankhya and the Vrittis of Yoga. So back to the Vrittis of Yoga, this was more about thoughts, right? I mean, you saw how the Gunas were kind of worked into it and mentioned once in a while, moods and so forth. But this really has more to do with your thoughts and how you can change your thoughts, even transform your thoughts, or even not think. Remember, I sent like 608 verses on the Atman I composed at the end of his life. He was passing from the body, so I wrote him 808 verses on the Atman. He wrote back to me and said, oh, this is the best of Vedanta thinking, or not thinking. So I always knew that I was on the right track with that, turn off the thoughts kind of idea. We don't want it to be an abject void, as they were saying, or something that's, as described in some problematic vrittis in yoga, that Father of Yoga talks about. There's got to be that presence there in the emptiness. There's got to be your attention to it, your deep savoring of it. We used to use the word savoring of consciousness. Or the satisfaction of watching snowbanks pile up on a dry road. And you can only use metaphors and analogies and to describe some of these high truths. So these 3 mountain climbers here, that bottom one's a woman, looks like, and then maybe the top middle one's a woman too, but whatever the case, these are enterprising beings. They're intrepid spiritual travelers, as Lex used to say. We want to be an intrepid spiritual traveler. So they're up that face, fearless, and they're going to reach the top, as the 3rd one has begun to do. And this is you can see there the pure yogic balance of this picture I shot once of these 3 birds in the air, and managed to get that, minimize it down to put it on the chart. But those 3 gunas you see right, like facing each other in perfect balance, watching each other, observing each other, knowing the cosmic process and so forth, is there at that level of transcending reflections. But let's not jump there quite yet. Let's look at the traits of mixed sattva first. You'll recognize them because many of them were there at Shankara's chart with the 3 fencers, so we can go through them quick. Absence of pride, beneficial denial, observance of spiritual practice, control of sense organs, faith in God or self, devotion to Ishvara, desire for liberation, a divine nature, and renunciation. I would say probably the only comment that comes to mind in repeating these is that divine nature, daiva, is very important. There are people with animalistic natures and there are people with heroic natures, the Tantra says. But these people with divine natures are very exceptional beings. And so if you come to the body with those, you take your incarnation with those, and then have chosen right, your path, your parents, everything, in a dharmic country and so forth, then you're exhibiting your higher sattvic traits as you grow up. Oh, that baby shines, or that soul is, illumined at 6. What kind of soul is that, like Shankara? And then you're also exemplifying these teachings. You have to be about your father's business as quick as you possibly can inside of that particular culture that you've been born in, what they will allow. So mentioning about divine nature, something we want to claim here so that we'll always bring it with us. It's almost a safeguard against every problem that could happen in Maya. Almost like, getting Prakasha Shakti on your side, and having Sattva Guna on the other. What can ever foil your attempts anymore? Now, the traits of pure Sattva below there, it is Atma Sattva. That is, it's pure Prasadam. The beautiful teaching, if you think the word Prasadam, there are 4 kinds of Prasad, basically. And, Samprasad, there's food, Anaprasad, there's mood, and there's there's Adhyatma Prasad, the mood of your true self, is the pure mood of yourself. And Chitta Prasad was the one I list out. That's your thoughts. Your thoughts also must be a kind of prasad. That's a beautiful teaching in mother teaching, the 4 kinds of prasad. So that pure sattva is pure prasad. Pure prasadam. You're enjoying exquisitely everything you take when your mind's in that. You don't have a bad meal or a bad sleep or a bad day. It's just everything is the way it should be in divine life. And waking, dreaming, and deep sleep aren't there anymore, as the Avatut would sing. So it's not like you have to wake up and deal with something that happened to you in a darker state last night, or that you have to, all of a sudden deal with karmas from a past lifetime that are coming out of nowhere. You've just reached this prasad balance, and you see them living in that. Then you have the second one, is blissful by nature. What is that pure sattva we're talking about, that we're going to describe here soon? It's blissful by nature. Sadhanandam rasam is a nice Sanskrit there. It's self-realization. So they're saying it's that, it's that, it's that. It's not like it seems like that, or here's a metaphor for that. It's that. It's pure prasadam, it's blissful, and it's self-realization itself. Not, as you would say, a path that I have to take to get to self-realization. No, it's that itself. All paths leading to it, they're over there in your sadhana for purification. But that's the nature of the thing. It's like the sun shining by its own light. Whereas the moon, the intellect, it's got to borrow light from the Atman. So this is why they're setting it up this way. It's sadhanandam rasam, it's atmic sattva, and it's anubhuti, the thing in itself. It's supreme peace, not just shanti, shanti, shanti. It's prashantihi. So you've gone to beyond the triputi again, once you've understood it. May peace be to the 3 worlds. Yeah, good luck with that. But I want prasad, I want prashanti. It's joyous and cheerful. Tripti praharshaha. So harshaha, you know what some of these words mean in their roots, but joyous and cheerful by nature. At that level of this climber who's making the way up, you see, this quote is very nice. Shankara says, when the veiling power disappears, the distinction between the universe and Brahman becomes clear. And change is then perceived in phenomena only, never in Brahman. Can I get a hip hip hurrah for that? Yay! You see, I mean, that's a real, how they say, banner day, That's a real landmark in spiritual life, where you could say that. I see all change takes place in the world, not in me. Brahma is transformationless, and so few people understand that, particularly in the West. They always want to attach some vestige of transformation to Brahman, like going to heaven or whatever it might be. No, leave that in the list over here that, that we gave you. Connect those two and think of it that way, or don't think of it at all. That is, once you reach the highest elevation, give up thought, just like you would give up breath. So a beautiful quote Shankara is guiding us on. Now, the second level of this, because I found this image, I was very happy to have those 3 levels, because it's a good way of describing sattva shuddha as we begin to ascend. So here's the way I put the title of the chart, which I forgot to give you: Sattva Guna, Transcending Reflections, and Liberating Methods of Advaita. So we've just looked at the Sattva Guna, and now we want to look at this transcending reflections, mirrors that we're looking at as we rise in our realization of the centers, Kundalini, Shakti, and so forth. As consciousness dawns on itself, you might say. So basically, to transcend reflections, then freedom while embodied equals disembodied freedom. So you're not thinking, as my teacher used to say, I'm not interested in a post-mortem emancipation. You would stop everyone's thoughts, whatever thoughts they were having in the hall, from the lectern up there, say, I'm not interested in a post-mortem emancipation. So if anyone's thinking from their own Christian kind of way of believing, even if people didn't believe in rebirth, all of a sudden they believed in it because this great soul standing there did, but he was giving you a higher turn on it all. He's not waiting for his freedom because Avarana and Vikshepa Shakti will steal it from him when he's not looking. See, Tamas and Rajas might come along in any given mode or mood and steal it. Like one song in India says, "O death, do you think you can steal Divine Mother realization from me like candy from the hands of a baby? I'm not immature anymore. You can't do that to me." So it's that kind of vigil has turned into that kind of assurance, certainty. You've got the courage of your convictions. I like that saying. So then you become assured that if I'm free here, I'm free everywhere. I was free before, I'm free now, and I'm free after, but before, after, and now don't really exist anymore. The Avatut can sing about that if you like. Knowing that perceiving difference from Brahman brings fear. If you're one with Brahman, there's no fear. If you have any sense that you're not Brahman, that's where fear will sneak in. That's a Gaudapada teaching, really. Shankar's teacher brought that forward. Fear always persists in the absence of a knower of Brahman, he says, in the firebrand, I think, part of the Gaudapada's Karka on the Mandukya Upanishad. So if that fear is there, then you're not certain. You don't have the courage of your convictions around the inseparability of you and Brahman. And that's the second great delusion in the Annapurna Upanishad of the 5 delusions. I told you the fourth one in the first half. That's the second one, is that you're absolutely sure that the Jiva and Brahman are one thing, despite appearances. Despite all appearances to the contrary. See? And there are many of them. We're just talking about the philosophical ones here, for minds that are, into yoga. We're not talking about the things that are there for the poor people who haven't discovered yoga yet, who aren't doing sadhana yet, are still gravitating in conventional religion in rounds with their ancestors. Let's not go there. It's like getting the real thing from the real source in a few words. If you have the mind to search that out, listen, and see the garland of Rangan jasmine flowers around Annapurna's neck, that'll have its effect. And then you should be celebrating the glory of the indivisible self. You see, that's not the individual self, in case you didn't hear me right. That's the indivisible self. So we make a strong distinction between those two. The individual self is the ego. Ripen that quick, and then it won't get in the way, Sri Ramakrishna says. But the indivisible self, that's the Atman. It's one with Brahman. It's just that it has taken on 5 sheaths, apparently. So that's the only, people ask you, why do you have so many words for that reality, like Atman and Brahman? Well, because the Atman can take on sheaths if it wants. Or it can be covered and take on sheaths too. People can cover it. We know that. But Brahman never will, never can, never was covered. Those kinds of ideas don't occur in Brahman. Worlds, people, beings, qualities, attributes, dharma, Atmagyan does not occur in Brahman. So, what to speak of all this lower considerations that people have to suffer? Even the higher things go away there. Which is why mantra in the Lord's name will lead you there, to the gate. But you have to pass through it. Dealing with ignorance via abidance in the Atman. If you could do that instead of having to do sadhana, it's there. If we knew who we are, the Atman, my teacher used to say, then you wouldn't have to do sadhana. And he was loath to say that to us, because then people would probably run away and say, hey, did you hear what he said? I don't have to do sadhana. But that means, how else are you going to know your Atman through the thick of all this? Through the thick and thin, through the smoke and mirrors, through the reflections. How are you going to know the original is the reflection? Then observing the unreality of the world via constant discrimination. Like wiping the mind of the mirror clean every day. It's not the Atman, so it's going to collect some dust. So just get up and wipe it every day. I see not a speck on it. Because smoke will stain a wall, but it can't stain the Akasha, Sri Ramakrishna said. So you want to make sure to have those cleaning utensils out, called purification, so that you always get the perfect view of your true nature. You'll never be in doubt of it. It's what the rest of this is all about. You can see why these reflections can come along. You can see through them to the ultimate source. Remaining of cheerful mind and disposition. That would be that utsaha is a nice Sanskrit word. You're always enthusiastic, like our founder, like Siksin, SRV, was always just supremely enthusiastic. Vivekananda said something like, basically, my mind is just so inspired to know that there are people in the world who are hearing the words of Vedanta. That was the thing he wanted most of all. And it really inspired him to know that people were hearing those ancient words of the rishis and maybe would act on them. Seeing that the real is blissful and the unreal brings suffering would probably be one of the final reflections that you'd have to, you could leave the house of mirrors at that point, you see. That mind is still suffering differences, even at this higher level, because those become more minute and, the specks in the mirror much smaller and tinier, like matra tiny. And but that one realization would say that if suffering I'm experiencing is not real, then why is it there? And why am I holding it? And the immediate shift of consciousness from that point would be to the real. Establishing oneself in the real. That's Nietzsche, Vastu, Viveka. You discriminate between the eternal and the non-eternal. And when you do, it's the wheat from the chaff kind of teaching of Jesus to the people. And you've arrived. Now, that sattvic state that we were talking about, if that went away, those non-dual truths would go away. They'd become fuzzy. And you wouldn't feel the same power from them because your mind dropped. So you see why you want to keep what he said before, remaining cheerful, constant discrimination. These are the attributes of pure sattva. So until you can go beyond the gunas completely and not suffer return to the gunas against your own will, then that's what's going to be required of you, to remain in that balance, yogic equipoise. Being clear that there is no freedom for body-bound souls is another thing. Because the mind is a kind of body too. It's called a subtle body, or sukshma sharira. And you've got the gross body, stula sharira. But this mind is a whole kingdom of heaven within itself. That's where all these lands lie. That's where all of this came from. The finite came from the infinite. You're talking about the territory of the mind, and what's beyond it is the province of the enlightened. Gaudapada says. So you're stepping in the levels of your own consciousness, and at that sattvic level you're having these new revelations visit you at a higher level, and they're beginning to show you things that need to be remade to cut yourself an image. Like Vivekananda trying to convince Nivedita, when she was a very upright, positive, very tuned in person. Sorry, we have to remake your mind. You don't understand India. If you're going to work here with India and take on the orphans and do all the great work she did, there's some things you have to understand about India, rishis, the rishis. What you're seeing here in India is tamas right now. Unfortunately, what I have to show you is pure sattva and beyond. Those things you need to have a whole new schooling in. It's a new education. And you can read those beautiful things in her journals and some of the things she wrote about, like Master as I Saw Him. It's a good book, So she was really keenly aware of him being a great teacher and listening to him very deeply. So, moving along because of our time, that's a very beautiful box of sattvic to pure sattvic considerations that the mind might have to introduce itself to and reflect upon. At the top there, we'll end with the quote, but let's look at the liberating methods of Advaita Vedanta. That would be contemplating perfect union with Brahman, always. Like, I'm not interested in a post-mortem emancipation. Why? Because I was always Brahman, and Brahman doesn't dream. All dream takes place in nature. So we go down to the bottom of the chart and reread. All changes and phenomena are taking place there, not in me, and I am Brahman, so not in Brahman either. Just connect the dots. And then meditate on those dots, isn't it? Om Drishram Pratitam Pravilavayan San Matram Anandaganam, a mass of pure bliss. Vibhavayam. Samahita Sang Bahir, the outer, Antaram, the inner, Va. Take them both into one state of consciousness. Meditate upon them, pass your time contentedly, and be free, you see. Burn them all, sati, burn them all, and come out with that ash of perfect renunciation and smear it all over yourself like Lord Shiva. Knowing that self-Atman is the truth in all. It's there in the good, it's there in the evil. It's there in the virtuous, it's there in those who have vice. In the latter, it's there buried by mounds of earth. But in the former, it's right on the surface shining, Sri Ramakrishna said. And you would probably understand that better if you knew Prakasha Shakti, Vikshekpa Shakti, and Avarana Shakti, and their influence on people's minds. Gunas and Vrittis, you would understand the evil better. You understand the deluded better. And you understand the power that's in them, and you understand the power that could remake them, even at a high level, like Sri Ramakrishna and the Brahman priests, or Swamiji and Nivedita. At a very high level, you'd be able to understand exactly what that operating power is, where they're at in it, how to take them to the next higher level, and inspire them towards the goal. A goal which is an eternal verity. So nurture the Brahman state. So once you have it, it's not something to just ignore. Of course, I don't see how you really could. But Shankara has another beautiful teaching in the Vivekachana we have a chart on called neglecting the Brahman state. So definitely is aware that you should nurture it, because not nurturing it is a kind of neglect. And this earth, at least, probably even in the three worlds, ancestors, humans, intermediary levels, you're going to want to keep that vigil up all the time. And that becomes your, that becomes like sadhana or us, you know. We don't know anything else but sadhana, sorry. And we don't hear anything else but the Dharma. And we don't believe in anything else except the truth. We don't know anything other than Brahman. That's right in the Upanishads. We know nothing but Brahman. We can't speak about that. So, you know, last time you heard that was when I taught that seminar on Adiropanapavada, and how in the Prajnopanishad, in the sixth question, there's that beautiful teaching of the rivers flowing to the sea. So the people up inland, you know, are all into the rivers, you know. That's what everything's about. So they're always talking about river this, river that, boat this, fish that, net. Down at the ocean, the rivers disappear, and it's just the ocean. People who live there are just talking ocean, ocean, ocean. What was that? I said ocean. The rivers are gone. All those are gone. They only know about the ocean. So that's why they say at the end of that question, the Rishi tells him, those beings at that level, they only know Brahman. They don't know anything else. So all they can talk about is Brahman. And they'll tell you so. Well, we don't know anything about that, but we can tell you about Brahman. So here's another at that method. If these are methods that are so inscrutable, I mean, almost invisible, you know, that you wouldn't think, you'd think maybe they'd just be something to consider and agree with, and that's it. But here's the next one, carefully observing avarana and vikshepa shakti. So what I just said, if you're going to want to help others and have wisdom, compassion, that's one reason to always keep your eye on veiling power in societies and distorting power in societies from a distance. From a distance. So basically you want to make sure you don't get into Maya and muck it up with everyone else, but you, Sri Ramakrishna said, you observe Maya from a distance and study it. So in that way, Avarana and Vikshepa Shakti can offer you up a lot of insights about people, nations, birth, life, death, rebirth, whatever it is you want to know. Probably you don't need to know it at that point because all you know is the ocean. So you'd look at that and say, ocean. So, but it's an ocean of samsara rather than an ocean of ananda. So there's these two oceans, Ananda Sagara and Samsara Sagara. So which ocean do you want to live in and swim in and sail? Sail smoothly across the ocean of existence. At the same time, you'd note the clear distinction between the seer and the seen. And consciously destroying all seeds for rebirth. It's a very powerful teaching. They must last a long time, these desires to be reborn again, for whatever reasons. And if that is conscious, then you say, well, I'm definitely going to take this many births to accomplish this much enlightenment in the world. I'll take a vow of 10 bodhisattva births. See? And the teacher says, very good, very good. Not very many, but good luck with that, you know. You know, I took 50 before, you know. So, in that way, they will keep seeds, you know, candles of ego, Sri Ramakrishna would say. Take that, not give up the ego completely and dissolve it into nothing, but keep some little desire and bring it back. Maybe in Sri Ramakrishna it was like eating rasagolas or something. I'll keep that desire. Come back. And Swamiji, it was chocolate ice cream. Yeah, we all know that. Gets up from the table. The host says, wants to keep him at the table for the guest's sake. Swami, there's chocolate ice cream. Zip. I'll come back and 100 lifetimes and help even one person out of suffering, he said. But you didn't see the parents, if you'll give me chocolate ice cream. So destroying the seeds of rebirth, actually, the Avatut, this free soul we love to think about and sing about, he has something to say about that via his stotram. The Jnanamritam stotram. Samsara satatilata nachame kadachit santosha satati sukho nachame kadachit agyana bandhanam idam nachame kadachit gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham Jnanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham. Ragadi dosharaitam tvahameva tattvam Daivadi dosharahitam tvahameva tattvam Samsara shokarahitam tvavamevam tattvam Jnanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham Jnanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham. He goes on singing about bodies, basically. It's like 2 or 3 of these 40 verses are about bodies and bodiless state. In the first one he was singing, the clinging creeper of birth and death has fallen off my true body. That would probably be the mind. I don't know if you could say that would be the Atman, but that true body is really the mind from which everything comes. So the whole idea of the mind producing bodies again and again, that's a creeper that, I shook it off. I don't want it growing on me anymore. And I have found that the happiness and miseries that belong to life are not in my true self. Instead, I am pure existence, pure knowledge, pure bliss. Boundless as the sky, infinite like space. The 6 passions are like sons and daughters of a barren woman to Brahman. Supernatural agencies with their legerdemain over souls are a chimerical illusion to it. What to speak of these, the body, the physical world, and its many blemishes cannot touch me. For I am the pure existence, wisdom and bliss, as boundless as the sky, infinite like space. And I think he has one other sloka there on the body. So it pertains to this penultimate one we're looking at, calling them, rather controversially maybe, Advaitic methods. Consciously destroying the seeds for rebirth. I actually sometimes ask some of my students, some of them Hindus, oh no, we're not coming back here again. No more rebirth for us. They've like made that definite conclusion. And some of them, no, we're not having children. We're sorry to have been such a trouble to our parents. Why would we want to go through the same thing again with our children? So basically, I'm not going to reborn again. Certainly not in the samsara sagara. Maybe in the Ananda Sarga I can take on another body, a finer body, but where birth, death, and all those things are creepers that I just sloughed off. Like there were dreams I had to wake up from. Cobwebs I had to sweep out the attic from. So then finally, exerting effort towards eliminating false seeing. And probably the study of Avarana and Vikshepa Shakti and revelatory power is going to be object lessons in that very thing. It's not like it's there in you anymore. You're resolved about it. You've detached from it. And now you just want to make real sure that you're versed in the art of always knowing the distinction between this and that, and being able to help others because you know that. You know, I am that. So that's how careful they are, at least in these worlds. And so we end this 3-class series with this beautiful quote from the Upanishads. That one who worships in the sacred and stainless shrine of the Atman, which is independent of time, space, and distance, which is present everywhere, which is the destroyer of the pains of the pairs of opposites, and which is the giver of eternal happiness, becomes all-knowing, all-pervading, and attains hereafter eternal life. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Tatsnayo Ravrini Mahe Gatum Yogyaya Gatum Yena Pataye Daivi Swastarastu Naha Swastir Manusebyaha Ordvam Jagatu Besajam Sangno Astu Dvipade Sangchachushpate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we make a great offering of the small self into the real self. May we always revere the mother and father of all sacrifices. May divine blessings be upon us. May healing be unto the entire human race. And may well-being and prosperity also abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.